So Nicholas Pegues reporting a happy Sunday to my Facebook friends in London, England, and of course to UK Parliament and to Buckingham Palace in conjunction with Washington, D.C. and all of my friends at the White House. First of all, I would like to truly apologize to Mayor A.C. Wharton for so much friction that has been caused regarding the Shelby County Unified School Board merger here in Memphis, Tennessee. I would like to send my sincere apologies as the youngest Shelby County Unified School Board applicant in 2011 nominated to represent East Memphis and Germantown, Tennessee. I truly value our city government. I truly value all of our elected officials. It is so unfortunate that at times we have become quite divided in Memphis politics. At any rate, I have declared myself, and I am the adoptive heir of the Wolfdraw Fontaine family home, dream, and everything that includes regarding the House of Fontaine. The global community loves me. I love promoting Victorian Village as a descendant of Victorian Village, Collins Chapel Historic District. So I love diversity and I love promoting the dream of innovation. So anything that I do now will be in honor of the Fontaine family of Memphis, Tennessee, because I am the hereditary adopter of his ideas, the way that he ran Memphis. I love everything Victorian Village, and of course I am labeled Victorian Village, the mayor, and of course a descendant of Victorian Village, College Chapel Historic District, which is on my Facebook page. But Victorian Village, the mayor, that's more of a ceremonial title. But I am a descendant of Victorian Village, College Chapel Historic District. At any rate, in honor of this proud accomplishment of bringing, not just diversity to Memphis, but in honor of me declaring myself the hereditary adopter of the Fontaine family and everything Fontaine and everything Victorian Village. I'm going to be reading out a letter from the President of the United States dated March 25th, 2014. And in fact, I pulled my petition for United States Congress January 4th, 2014. At any rate, it says, Dear Nicholas, thank you for writing. Perspectives like yours are important to me. They give me a window into real life concerns of the American people, and they inform me the decisions I make as president. Please know I work hard every day to do right by the people like you. As a nation, we still have a lot of work ahead of us, but I will continue doing everything I can to keep us moving in the right direction. He also explained, thank you again for sharing your thoughts with me and to stay engaged with the administration. And I encourage you to explore the White House on the whitehouse.gov. And of course, it's signed President Barack Obama, the President of the United States, and dated March 25th, 2014. So at any rate, President Barack Obama, I am the adoptive, representative for the Fontaine family. I'm promoting everything Victorian Village, and from here on out, as long as I'm a public figure, as long as I'm a Memphis politician, as long as I'm a United States politician, I am the Roofdraw Fontaine House. I am the Fontaine family. I represent everything Victorian Village as Victorian Village the mayor. And of course, I have so many titles such as President Barack Obama, I am your pit hide, such as, Nicholas, the governor, Pegues, referred to me like Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam. Now, I really like that title. That's awesome. At any rate, I am the House of Fontaine, representing one of the richest families in the world at one point. Nicholas Pegues reporting. Happy Sunday to everyone in city government and to around the world. And we can do the impossible. We can become anything that we want to become in life if we just dream the impossible. Nicholas Pegues reported. May God save the Queen, and God bless everyone at Buckingham Palace. Thank you.
So Nicholas Pegues reporting, CNN Our Report on Memphis, famous for being Piggies, here with Mayor A.C. Wharton. What do you have to say to Memphis, and what do you think about President Barack Obama coming here to Chattanooga?
Well, it's great to be here to welcome him, to let him know the good things that are happening under his administration. The recovery is here. Jobs are being produced every day. Good paying jobs. Everything that lines up with what the president is talking about in terms of rebuilding and fortifying the middle class. This is Exhibit A. I just want to congratulate him, all the good folks here in Chattanooga, Mayor Burton, all of his colleagues, but most of all to say thanks to President Obama and to thank him for the great work he's doing.
Absolutely, and I'm on a campaign to bring more love back to Tennessee politics. You're a good guy, Mayor A.C. Wharton.
Let's get it done.
Nicholas Pegues reporting here in Memphis, Tennessee, a Victorian Village.
here in the city of Memphis, where I just attended church today. First African American church established here in Victorian Village. And here is part of my documentary, for CNN Our Report. Here are some of the historic homes of Victorian Village here in Memphis, Tennessee. Very interesting. Nicholas Pegues reporting. Promoting and educating the international community about Memphis and its historic history. And here is the house that I'm going to tour today. The CNN Our Reporter, called the Woodruff Fontaine House and Museum. Let's go in and tour it. Nicholas Pegues reporting. Here at Victorian Village. Nicholas Pegues, CNN Our Reporter, Memphis.
Stairway. And these pieces of garland here are lead. They weigh about 4 pounds each. Some of these had to be reproduced. This is cypress wood. The termites do not eat it, so cypress is used throughout the house. The railing that runs down the staircase is mahogany. It's original. Now, some of the features that I'll point out are the symmetry. Victorians wanted everything to balance. They were very fussy. So you've got these two doors on either side of the back door. And when we were doing the restoration in 1960, this was nailed shut, and we didn't know where it went. To nowhere.
But it matched the other door.
Yeah, and that was really the only reason that's there. However, the men that built this house were so proud of their work, they signed the door. This is unfinished cypress, and their signatures are on there, and they're beautiful handwriting. These men had beautiful handwriting, artistic handwriting, and they were from Canada, all of the United States, that helped build this house. The birth date of the home is on that middle panel, 1871, February 11th.
Portrait in the front hall of Daisy Mallory, who was the last resident. And she had the foresight to actually leave the house complete with its contents. And it's now part of the Memphis museum systems. And it's such a wonderful thing to go through and see furniture that was bought at the World's Fair and that was purchased particularly to go in a certain place in the house. It's not things that have been put back in, but you really get the sense of how people lived and what the bay and the parlor was like and where the musicians might have stood while they played for dinner parties. And that's very rare. I can only think of a few other houses in the United States that are preserved in that condition.
Our family moved here in the mid-1800s, and we're in the cotton warehousing business and banking business and general business community. And I think their neighbors along the street were also in similar businesses, primarily agricultural focused. We call my grandmother's house Adam Street. We always referred to it as we're going to go to Adam Street. Adam Street as a structure was just your grandmother's house. She was the reason we went to visit, and she set the rules and we followed them.
If these other houses looked as grand as this one, then Memphis had some really, really prosperous, amazingly wealthy people. You know, you've seen the pictures of Napoleon Hill's house, you know, and you know that okay, this man had some money in late 19th century Memphis, so his house would have had to have been as fabulous as this one. So, and then having gone into the Hunt Phelan house before, you know, they took all the stuff out and everything and remodel, and it's a bed and breakfast now. That was a grand house. It's fantastic, beautiful house.
If you were a very wealthy family, you might have a drawing room, and this was a room that was used for entertaining and really to impress people. It was usually a very large room, and you might use it also for dances and things like that. Another thing that went on in the house that was very different from the way we live is there was separation. This house, if you go along to the side, the Woodruff Fontaine house, the servants' wing is lower than the rest of the house. You have to actually step up 2 or 3 steps to get into the rest of the house. And the back wing has porches all along the back. Their porches are separate from the other porches on the house, which were for the Woodruffs and the Fontaine, not for the servants. There definitely is a back stair, and houses were zoned for servants as well as for the people in the house. And they were to come and really take care of your needs, but not spy on you all the time. This was a really big deal. Delivery men, callers coming in all the time, no telephones, little notes being delivered, and also, of course, having to deal with the daily activity of children and all their bumps and bruises and things like that. Nothing was simple. Everything was much harder. Also, don't forget, you can't just go and jump in the car. Oops. There has to be horses, there has to be a stable, and there has to be those people that take care of it too.
They had horses, and the old Sanborn insurance maps show that behind the Lee House, where we have a parking lot now, sheds ran down that slope for probably a cow or 2 and the horses, and of course there were 2 stables here.
Most houses in the 19th century would have had a privy, an outhouse in the backyard. If you were an upper class individual, you might have a toilet that had a copper pan that was surrounding it, and we didn't have oval toilets at that time, and there might be overflow into the pan. It's such a change from today when our bathrooms have gotten so large and luxurious. Bathrooms were stinky, nasty places that people didn't like to clean. So they were as small as possible. But houses would have lavatories, so you would have a place to go in and wash. Also, there were washstands in houses too, the typical pitcher and the bowl that we see, very much used into the late 19th century.
Well, it's funny because many times we think about the activity alone just to run this house, just to get the fires cleaned out and started, to get the food started, to get there had to be a full staff of people to keep the dust off of this exquisite furniture and the paintings that were here. My personal favorite is the fact that there's a chamber pot in every room in this house on the upper floors, and that alone was something that had to be taken care of.
Most people don't know that there was a very strict calling etiquette, and that certain times of the week ladies would go and call on other ladies. There would be certain days that the lady of the house would have to accept callers. And that person would come in, they would leave their calling card. It would go on a tray and go upstairs. They would be accepted or they would be rejected.
Lacking television, lacking radio, things that they knew nothing about and could not imagine, a great deal of social life involved interaction with people. With women, it could involve simply meeting mutually for sewing parties or to talk or to prepare things for charitable causes. Men, often it would involve business discussions, but that could be involved over card games. Of course, drinking was common throughout in Memphis.
Memphis has always been a town known for its music. Scores of immigrants from European countries, as well as other cities in the United States, brought along their art and cultural influences, creating the rich melting pot that has been at the core of the Memphis music story.
The technology of the second half of the 19th century certainly makes some amazing things happen. And particularly in the area of the arts, you move from a what would have previously been something of an elite ability to hear live music. There are only certain places that could afford to have, say, an organ or to have a piano. You more typically had mandolin. You had mandolin societies all over the place because that's an instrument that's easily portable, it's a little cheaper and so on. So it's amazing how many mandolin clubs that you have. But with technology, you make a piano and you make the parts of a piano much more, let's call it widgetized. You can make many of those in mass production. So what would have been an expensive instrument, by the 1870s, a piano costs $200. You can own a piano for $200. And you do see scores of people, hundreds of people, being able to have their own parlor piano, or even cheaper. You can mass produce the parts that make a little pump organ. You can have those instruments available for $80. So if you can't afford a piano, you can afford a little pump organ. And that made live music possible, not as a destination, but something I can have in my own home. Therefore, the technology then becomes enabling. What do you have to have? Well, you have to have someone to play the piano or play the organ. You have to have some renewable source of tunes and songs. And so that sets up this whole pyramid of retail that provides you a piano or an organ, sheet music. You need some new tunes next week. We heard that one. We want a new one. We can't download it. We have to go and buy it at a sheet music store, and someone has to learn to play it. And then, of course, we have to have teachers, people that can teach the household person or persons how to indeed play that instrument. We have several retail stores that are blossoming in the late 19th century in Memphis. One of the biggest would be Emil Witzman and Company, and we have the ledger in the Memphis Public Library of all the pianos that were sold from 1873 to the turn of the century. So we actually know the households, thanks to the good archival work of our friends here. We have the actual households and churches and schools where those instruments were sold. They were sold by the hundreds. They were in homes over and over again. In Memphis, northern Mississippi, Arkansas, those pianos were being distributed all over the area. The presence of bands and civic bands and bands based upon people's ethnicity, let's say a group of Swiss or a group of Italian or a group of Germans, these were direct transfers from cultural desires and preferences that they brought from their mother country. Brass instruments indeed were big items in Germany and Germanic countries, and so it's no surprise that we see these German bands being popular, and Memphis had theirs early on. We didn't have modern forms of entertainment. We did not have the phonograph. I mean, the phonograph comes along later, radio comes along later, and there's a great social shift there with what happens in the parlor. But before you have that, the only way you can have live music, the way you can enjoy music, only one way is to create it yourself. You have to home make it.
I've just always been fascinated by antiquity, and I saw all these buildings being torn down in this area. The urban renewal had moved into this area, and a lot of older parts of Memphis, like over on Vance, but particularly this part, and they just were destroying so much. And I thought it was such a shame that Memphis was not saving any of its old buildings. Not a one was. So that's why I got so fired up about it. I was seeing these things being demolished right under my nose, all on Jefferson and Adams and Washington. And I thought, this is just criminal to all these big, torn down in the name of progress, which wasn't progress at all.
Eldridge toughed it out through thin and thinner. When the city widened Jefferson, they took down his grandfather's house, I think it was, Luke.
They were going to tear the whole house down. I persuaded them to just take that was a huge house, take what they needed off the front. If they needed to take some of the facade off the front and leave the rest. They wanted to restore it. They said to widen the street, they would have to take something like 5 feet of the facade of the house, the front facade, which was removing all the most interesting parts, almost all of the Italianate work that my great aunt had been putting on there. But so they did remove that, and I had plans to restore it basically as it had been. But fate came along and changed my plans. One whole side of the house collapsed one night. I think it had been so weakened by the demolition of removing the facade across the front that it weakened the whole house, and one whole wall collapsed on the west side.
And he was not to be deterred. He saved all the bricks. Sat out there in the broiling sun and knocked all of the cement off of the bricks and saved them, and then built that beautiful wall.
And a lot of interesting dignitaries came to that house, you know. When Teddy Roosevelt came to Memphis, he was an Italian that was after my grandfather had been his Secretary of War, and he came to Memphis. And because he was an Italian there, people did such bizarre things, I think. My great-grandmother had all the silverware and the silver goblets and everything that they were going to use for the great dinner party. All of that was gold-plated for the party.
When I first went to visit him, he was living in the carriage house with plastic covering all the carriage doors. And he was living in there year-round. Gradually, he did that building in beautiful style, and then decided, I don't know whether he decided he had put enough money in there, but he certainly didn't want this house around here on Adams to go belly up, so to speak. And so he came around here and got this house. He has stayed with this through all of these years, and we dubbed him the mayor of Adams Avenue a long time ago.
Well, I think that, you know, he was a candle in the darkness. You know, everybody was leaving rather than coming in. And it's taken many years even for his idea of what the neighborhood would be like to start coming about. And he was actually the initial founder of our group, Victorian Village, Inc., a community development corporation that he started in the early 70s with quite a few members of society that were interested in saving the neighborhood. So now we've renewed that group, and our plan is to continue the revitalization of the area.
Much change has come to Memphis, and the tendency has been to demolish everything from the past, put up what is most recent, until it in turn gets removed also. So when you go back past the Victorian era, only a handful of structures really are left in this great city of over 600,000 people. But in the Victorian era, this is the finest collection of architecture and artifacts of a way of life that is now gone, but still is a part of the life of the city visible today.
I come down this street every opportunity I get, and I look at this and I just feel connected to my home.
I think the urge to save these homes and the history they contain and what they can teach a younger generation once they get old enough to pay attention is very important. And you can't let it fall down and think you can talk about it later.
We're either doomed to repeat it or we can learn from it. And so the reason we want to preserve these things is we certainly want to learn from it. We've got great things to learn from our unique history.
I think it's one of the few places in Memphis where you can actually see how people lived in the late 19th century and turn of the century Memphis that, you know, I hate to say it, but Memphis is not really famous for maintaining historic locations, but here's this little place that you can bring people and say, this is what Memphis was like, late 19th, turn of the century.
Well, Collins Chapel is a part of Victorian Village by geography. It is a part of Victorian Village by belief in the community, by action, words, and deeds. We in this church have joined the Victorian Village family, and we support the neighborhood, the community, and we wish to play a role in the development of the neighborhood.
Houses get patination, and they go through history and time, and all the families that have gone through them and their stories very much are a part of the past that we need to be connected with.
I would love to see this become a village again. I would love to see Adams Avenue be blocked off as a walking path. I would love to see some new construction that would complement these older homes, become part of this village. I would love to see some adaptive reuse of the buildings that are taking hold here.
The concept of our development corporation is to bring a lot of residential back downtown, because we think that in order to preserve these houses, they need to become the centerpiece, they need to become the jewel